For those unaware, Dragon Ball is still a really big franchise. In the last video in this series, we went over 3 characters from the Dragon Ball mythos that I thought were underrated. At the end of the video, I asked you guys to suggest who I should go over next, and you guys delivered. In this video, we'll be going over 3 more underrated Dragon Ball characters. The first of which is the champion of Namek, Nail. Given that Nail's a Namekian, his design is relatively similar to Piccolo's. The big difference is that Nail is a bit slimmer and seems to have slightly softer facial features. The biggest difference between them in terms of their appearance is their clothing. Nail's baggy pants are white and he has no shirt. Instead, he wears a blue garb that drapes over his shoulders. He also has a white scarf, I think that is, which rests around his neck. Nail has a rather stern personality, and his most defining feature is his resolve to his people and his planet. Nail's abilities are rather basic. He only has one fight in the main continuity, and within that fight he displays the iconic Namekian ability of regeneration. I believe this is the first time we get confirmation that although Namekians can regrow their limbs, it does require an amount of effort, and they do not return to their full strength after doing so. Nail also has the Namekian ability of telepathy. We could also assume that Nail has stretching limbs. Other than that, Nail has the basic Dragon Ball abilities of Ki Blast, Super Strength, and Flight. Nail's first chapter is Dragon Ball Z Chapter 70. Nail hangs around and protects the Grand Elder Guru. He has some brief interactions with Dende, Gohan, and Krillin, and it's clear that he takes his job rather seriously. In the early Namek saga, the Z-Fighters are playing 4D chess with Freeza and his goons. Nail falls into this once he is told to follow Gohan and Krillin to help fight the Ginyu Force by the Grand Elder. Nail does at first, but gets cold feet and worries about the Grand Elder and decides to turn back. Nail makes up for this failure when Freeza himself finds him and Guru. Frieza demands that the 2 Namekians tell him the incantation to summon Porunga. Nail decides to fight Frieza in an attempt to stall him while the Z-Fighters use the Dragon Balls for their own plans. Our champion then has what has got to be one of the most one-sided fights in all of Dragon Ball, as Frieza just bitches him. Like, Frieza stays in his first form, uses one arm, and just violates Nail while calling him Sir. Frieza rips off Nail's arm and laughs off a pretty big blast as Nail struggles against him. Nail, though, gets the last laugh as he tells Frieza his plan. While he was distracting Frieza, Krillin, Gohan, and Dende were summoning Porunga. Because of this, instead of killing him, Frieza just leaves Nail to die so he can hunt down the Z-Fighters. Nail's next scene happens right after Piccolo is revived. While on his way to fight Frieza, Piccolo finds the downed warrior. They briefly interact and find out that they both know the details of the situation. Knowing that his time is coming, Nail makes the request that Piccolo assimilates him. Piccolo is hesitant at first, but after Nail says that it will help him defeat Frieza, and that Piccolo can stay the dominant personality, he agrees. Nail's final request is that Piccolo will be the one to defeat Frieza. And with that, Piccolo places his arm on Nail's chest as Nail glows a bright light and then disappears. The 2 warriors, now one. While Nail's life in the franchise is short-lived, his impact is certainly felt throughout the rest of the story. His assimilation with Piccolo was a pivotal moment in the Namek saga that allowed Piccolo to best second form Frieza, and then buy time against final form Frieza while Goku was charging the Spirit Bomb. The only other things to note from the Namek saga is that it becomes clear that Piccolo acquired Nail's memories, given that Piccolo knows who Dende is without even meeting him. Dende also finds out that Piccolo and Nail fused towards the end of the arc. Once we leave the Namek saga, we see that Nail has virtually 0 representation in Dragon Ball. This is unless we credit the idea of Namekian assimilation to him, as Piccolo does assimilate once again with Kami in the Cell saga. Other than that, Nail's last appearance that isn't a flashback takes place in a cool little moment in the Tournament of Power. And what is probably my vote for the most underrated moment of the Dragon Ball Super anime, we see Piccolo and Gohan fight the Xenoverse 6 Namekians. Piccolo is having a hard time fighting his opponents as he finds out that Sonel and Prima are actually 2 fused warriors comprised of the entirety of the Xenoverse 6 Namekian population. Prina ends up hitting Piccolo with a powerful mouth blast, knocking him down. Rattled by this attack, we actually see Kami and Nail stand beside Piccolo. The 2 say nothing and just stare at Piccolo, before Kami turns in front of him and points, directing his attention to Gohan, protecting his mentor from their opponent's onslaught. The most recent appearance of Nail is in a flashback in Dragon Ball Super Superhero, as Piccolo ends up asking Dende to perform the same ritual that Grand Elder Guru performed on him, Gohan, and Krillin. This is something that is only in the movie version, as the manga panel that displays this cuts Nail out of frame. The first trivia fact I have for you all is that Nail's name is a pun on the word snail. This is because in Dragon Ball Z, Toriyama decided to give the Namekians names derivative of mollusks. I think also this is the appropriate time to mention that the physical similarities between Nail and Piccolo are mentioned within the canon a couple of times, once by Piccolo when he finds Nail lying on the ground, and once by Dende when Piccolo comes to join the fight. Given that the Namek Saga was the last to really push power levels, we learned that Nail has a power level and it's 42,000. This is pretty insane once we consider what a good power level was in early Dragon Ball Z. With Saiyan Saga Goku having a power level of over 8,000 with the Kaioken, and Vegeta having a power level of 18,000, we can confidently say that Nail would just neg the Saiyan Saga outright. He's also stronger than most of Frieza's named goons, including Zarbon, Dodoria, and Kui. The exception to this is most of the Ginyu Force, as Ginyu easily trumps Nail. I do think it's safe to say that Nail clears Goldo, but Bert or Jason Raccoon are a bit harder to say, because all we can definitively say is that they have a power level over 30,000 when scaling them to Vegeta. This also means that Nail is stronger than every Saiyan that was under Frieza's command at the time of their death, besides, Broly if we were to count him, and this is excluding the giant ape form of the Saiyans. Something that I think is really cool that's Nail adjacent is Namek's role in the Moro Saga. The saga begins with Moro terrorizing Namek in pursuit of the Dragon Balls. With Goku and Vegeta down for the count, the Namekians decide to leave the fate in their own hands by having a superfused warrior combat the goat. This, unfortunately, didn't go very well. And while no reference to Nail is made here, I'm going to choose to believe that Nail's sacrifice against Frieza, as well as the events of the Namek Saga itself, persuaded the Namekians to be more willing to use assimilation in this manner. The dub of Dragon Ball Z decides to do something interesting with Nail. While researching this video, I found out that Nail actually speaks from Piccolo a couple of times. The first is when Piccolo tells Frieza they fused, and the second is when he tells Dende to heal Vegeta. Let me know what you guys think about this narrative choice. I kind of like it, but I also think it's weird how it seems that Piccolo can just kind of puppet Nail whenever he wants. It's also funny because they do this in the Dragon Ball Z dub, and they do that thing where they just kind of voice over the character that's out of frame, because they didn't want to reanimate the mouth flaps. It's very odd, and I recommend you guys check it out if you're interested in that sort of thing. And the final thing to mention about Nail is his involvement in Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 and Super Dragon Ball Heroes. Within Xenoverse 2, Nail's more meaningful contribution is his quest-giving status in the Guru's House mini-time rift. Nail also plays a small role in the main Xenoverse 2 story in a mission where the Time Patroller needs to help him stall for time against Frieza. Within Heroes, Nail makes a brief appearance in the Ultra God mission where he teams up with Piccolo, Gohan, and the Namekian in Black to face off against the demons of the past. So why is Nail underrated? It's clear he is to a certain extent, as he had the most likes out of any character in the comments of the last video. If I had to guess, I would say it's because of his resolve and serious no-jokes attitude. Nail's tenacity to the cause is something that also deserves to be admired. He fought Frieza for quite a while, knowing he couldn't win just because he knew it would buy Gohan, Krillin, and Dende more time to use the Dragon Balls. Other than that, I would have to assume that many fans view Nail as an area of missed potential for something greater. Having another Namekian warrior fight alongside the Z-Fighters who's aware of their abilities and culture is something that could have been pretty cool. I also want to say that that's not me bashing the end result we got, just sort of theorizing as to why this character has a sort of niche fan base. With all that though, I wonder how Nail is perceived by the creators of Dragon Ball media, given that he has a rather sparse appearance in video game content and shockingly little to do in Super Dragon Ball Heroes. So in the comments below, let me know what you guys like about Nail and why you guys commented him. Or if you didn't comment him, and if you don't like him, why don't you like him? Our next character is the chilliest of the chilled. Why be an emperor of the universe when you can be the king? That's right, we're talking about everyone's favorite, King Cold. King Cold looks most akin to Frieza's second form. Being much taller than Final Form / Mecha Frieza, King Cold has huge muscles and has the head orb and devilish horns. In his only appearance, he is wearing Frieza Force armor, which is worth noting as Frieza lost his armor pretty quickly throughout the transformations. King Cold also has a pretty swaggy red cape. Personality-wise, we don't see much of King Cold, but he does share Frieza's flamboyant and pompous attitude. There are some scenes that indicate he is pretty ruthless. So here's the funny thing about King Cold. I literally have nothing to say about his abilities. King Cold does nothing besides die. We can say that he has the basic Dragon Ball abilities like Flight, Ki Blasts, and Super Strength and Speed. I do think it's possible he has many of the same abilities as Frieza, even though we never see him do anything. This is because the two have similar ki, and in certain video games, King Cold does pull off the Death Beam. It's possible he could also do the Death Ball and Supernova. Another solid maybe is Frieza's telekinesis. Finally, I do think it's safe to assume King Cold cannot read power levels just like Frieza. As for history, King Cold is an interesting character, as he's one that's been operating in the background of Dragon Ball lore from the very beginning. To start with his first chronological appearance, Dragon Ball Super Broly shows us that King Cold used to rule the universe in a manner similar to Frieza. This included his iron grip and command over the Saiyans. This is until one day King Cold decides to let Frieza take over his army, turning the Cold Force into the Frieza Force. Before this, though, it's unclear when exactly King Cold took command and control over the Saiyans in the universe. We do know that he was just as feared as Freeza, if not maybe a little less, given that King Cold himself says that Freeza is more vicious than he is. All of this happens before the start of the original series. During that time, we're unsure what King Cold is up to. If I had to guess, he probably just lived a life of luxury as he thought he was the strongest in the universe. This is until he finds out that Freeza was defeated. After hearing this, the anime shows us that King Cold and his crew found what was left of Frieza's body and decided to patch him up. Once he was up and running, Freeza wanted to go straight to Earth and get revenge. King Cold agrees, and the two then go to Earth. The revenge plans are slighted by Trunks, who promptly killed Freeza. King Cold's next interaction with Trunks is pretty interesting, at least to me. Instead of getting angry or being distraught at Frieza's death, King Cold offers the position of being his son to Trunks. Trunks politely declines. King Cold then asks Trunks if he could borrow his sword. He did this to trick Trunks, thinking that the only reason that Trunks defeated Freeza was because of his blade. Knowing this, and knowing this isn't true, Trunks just promptly ki blasts King Cold, killing him. And thus is the end of King Cold in any real capacity. Despite that, he does have a few shoutouts in Dragon Ball Super. In Resurrection F, when resurrecting Frieza, Sorbet considered using the second wish to bring back King Cold. This is cut short by the Pilaf gang wishing for 1,000,000 Zenny. Sorbet brings this up to Frieza, and Frieza decides that it probably was best that his father just stayed dead, as he would ruin his revenge plans. Dragon Ball Super Broly is also where we get the scene of King Cold giving Frieza his army. His most recent appearance is in Dragon Ball Super Superhero, when Magenta pulls out a phone video of Trunks killing Frieza. What's funny about this is that they show Frieza jumping out of Trunks' blast, but not King Cold, which is a minor disconnect from the manga. As for trivia, the most famous factoid I can give you guys is that King Cold's name is derived from, get this guys, the word cold, following the naming scheme of Frieza. What's funny about this is that these two, being Frieza and Cold, are the only canonical instances of this naming scheme, as they are the only two members of Frieza's family made exclusively by Akira Toriyama. Something folks might have overlooked is that King Cold was one of the characters whose cells were used to make Cell. King Cold plays a minor role in some Z filler. If you remember the Cell section of my Androids video, then you'll know that after Cell's defeat, there's a brief scene that involves Cell, King Cold, Frieza, and the Ginyu Force terrorizing Hell. King Cold is also amongst the villains that watch the showdown between Goku and Kid Buu. Next up, there's the fact that King Cold knew of the existence of Buu and Beerus. This is revealed to us in Resurrection F when Sorbet updates Frieza on Goku and Vegeta's status. Frieza says that King Cold warned him never to mess with those two individuals if he ever happened to come across them. I think this is some cool retroactive world building in the Dragon Ball mythos, and makes me question what King Cold's relationship with Beerus was like. Is it similar to Frieza, who had a cautionary respect for Beerus? Or was there a moment where Beerus had to humble him? Another thing I want to cover is King Cold's questionable relationship with his kids. It seems that he cares for Frieza in his brief appearance, given that he went out looking for him, repaired him, and tried to help him fulfill his revenge plot, but he also seems to not care about his death and offers Trunks to take his place. I do think it's possible we could chalk this up to Cold wanting Trunks to lower his guard. Resurrection F tells us that Frieza himself might not have held his father in a very positive light. And then there's Cooler. Although not canon, it seems that Cooler has a much more negative perception of his father, as much throughout the fifth movie implies that Cooler's superiority complex was fueled by insecurity from his brother's talent and, potentially, lack of attention he received from his father. Something every Dragon Ball fan has asked is, was King Cold only in his second form? The similarities between King Cold's design and Frieza's second form is one every Dragon Ball fan has picked up on, and yet there's never been an official confirmation from any big sources stating that this is the case. According to the wiki, there seem to be two niche guidebooks that say that King Cold is capable of transformation. If he could then, I think we can confidently say that he is stronger than Frieza, given that his only appearance implies that the two are comparable in strength. If we were to say that King Cold was only in his second form and he had transformations similar to Frieza, then that would mean that he would be able to multiply his power by a whopping 140 times based on how strong Frieza got from his next two transformations. We could probably say that this hypothetical final form Cold could have been powerful enough to defeat the Super Saiyans, but he never had time nor felt the need to transform, given that Trunks ended him so quickly, and he probably couldn't sense energy. Another question just about every Dragon Ball fan has asked is, what happened to King Cold and Mecha Frieza in the future timeline? In the present timeline, we know that Trunks shows up and promptly defeats the two of them, but Trunks obviously didn't do this in his own timeline, given that he wasn't born yet. This has led to some Dragon Ball fans chalking this up to an inconsistency, or thinking that there was some big epic battle that we missed out on, but I think the answer is much more anticlimactic. It was Goku. Goku did it. Goku negged Frieza and King Cold. There we go, the end. No, I'm kidding. Although he was a couple hours away at the time King Cold and Frieza arrived on Earth, Goku in the future timeline would have had instant transmission by this point in the story. Given that, and the fact that we know Goku is at least comparable, if not stronger than Trunks at this time, then it's pretty easy to say that Goku probably blipped to Earth and just dealt with the trash. And finally, there's King Cold's contributions in Super Dragon Ball Heroes. King Cold makes 2 brief appearances in Heroes. The first is amidst the Prison Planet Saga manga, when Cooler is searching for the 7 Dragon Balls. We see that King Cold and his force lost to Hachiyak and his Shadow Fighters. When Cooler arrives, King Cold compliments his son and tells him that he's got stronger, and that now is the time for the 2 of them to work together. Cooler laughs this off and kills his father, saying that he won't be used and taken advantage of. King Cold also makes a brief cameo in the Hero Saga that features just about every Dragon Ball antagonist ever, being the Ultra God mission. So with all that, why do I think King Cold is underrated? I think the answer is quite simple. The existence of King Cold implies a lot of unseen stuff in the Dragon Ball world. Someone having a higher ranking than Frieza and just even being Frieza's family member brought a lot of potential for lore and world building that we just didn't get to see. I mean, he literally has only 4 chapters in the original series, and I just talked about him for like however many minutes this was. Personally, I think the coolest thing about King Cold is his knowledge of Boo and Beerus. I think seeing him interact with these mythical/legendary creatures for the first time could have been very interesting. Or even if he was a character who, although in the depths of Dragon Ball's science fiction side, acknowledges and appreciates more fantastical/magical things like the gods or ancient relics. I also think he would have had contrasted nicely with Frieza with his personality and knowledge of the universe. Overall, I think he could have been an exceptionally intriguing character to explore if the story wanted to. And I saved the best for last. You're welcome. Here we have my GOAT, the true protagonist, the man whose stomach knows no bounds, Yajirobe. Yajirobe is a chubby human with long, spiky hair. He's got a face reminiscent of early Dragon Ball characters with circular eyes and big eyebrows. He wears a brown yukata robe and a black belt. Yajirobe has a rather lazy personality, but that's okay, as we'll quickly find out that he typically contributes to the cause when it matters most. Something funny I want to quickly mention is that the manga character description says that Yajirobe has worse social skills than Goku. As for abilities, Yajirobe is just a strong swordsman. That's it. He can't fly, probably can't shoot ki blasts, he's just a strong guy with a cool sword. He is also pretty much the residential senzu bean supplier. So Yajirobe is introduced in original Dragon Ball Chapter 138 in the Demon King Piccolo saga, where Goku, after being promptly defeated by Tambourine, wakes up from his unconsciousness and eats a nice fish just lying around. This was the meal of Yajirobe, who, when finding out that Goku ate his meal, decides to get into a tussle. Shortly afterwards, the two calm down and Goku finds out that Yajirobe has a Dragon Ball. Then Symbol, another child of Demon King Piccolo, flies in to take the Dragon Ball from Yajirobe. This doesn't work, as Yajirobe splits him in half with his sword. After killing him, Yajirobe eats him. Yajirobe then sticks around to watch Goku defeat Tambourine, but after finding out that the great Demon King Piccolo is after the Dragon Balls, he gives it to Goku and runs away and hides. He does, however, decide to watch the fight, and thank goodness he does, as Goku almost dies. Upon this near death, Yajirobe is the one who finds him and helps resuscitate him. Goku then has the idea to go to Korin's tower and have Yajirobe climb him to the top. At the top of the tower, Yajirobe chills with Goku as he drinks the real sacred water. From here, Yajirobe and Goku depart for now as Goku rides off to fight the Demon King. But he makes one last appearance in the arc to catch Goku after he blows up Demon King Piccolo. In the 23rd World Tournament, we see Yajirobe dress in a disguise before getting knocked out in the preliminaries by Kami. He then secretly watches the fight once it's all over, congratulates Goku, and gives him a senzu bean. Yajirobe starts off Dragon Ball Z rather passively, with him being nowhere to be found against Raditz. He more than makes up for this by silently watching Goku's fight with Vegeta. After the Kaioken times 4, he congratulates Goku, with Goku once more going like, "Dude, when did you get here?" Yajirobe then takes part in this scramble to cut off Vegeta's tail. When the Spirit Bomb failed, and when the Kienzan failed, and when all hope seemed lost, there was one warrior who managed to rise above the rest, as Yajirobe swoops in and cuts off Vegeta's tail. He ain't done yet. After some more shenanigans of Vegeta being the OG Sukuna, Yajirobe comes out one more time to give another slash to Vegeta's back. He then sticks around with the Z-Fighters for the epilogue of the Saiyan Saga. He's mostly absent for the Namek Saga, but reappears at the start of the Cell Saga. Here he gives senzu beans to the Z-Fighters for their fights against the androids. Things go south as Yajirobe is shot out of the sky. He survives and decides to hang tight with Bulma and Baby Trunks. Bulma grills into him for not joining the rest of the Z-Fighters, but then apologize after Yajirobe tells her that he cannot fly. He then makes a minor appearance on Korin's tower when Goku goes to test his might. In the Buu Saga, Yajirobe once again makes a minor appearance on Korin's tower. It's when Goku gets senzu beans for Videl. We can actually see that he has a bit of a design change as he's now sporting a cool mustache. He also appears in the final illustration of the last chapter, waving goodbye at the reader. But if you thought we were done with Yajirobe, you've sorely mistaken, as Yajirobe does have a few appearances in Dragon Ball Super. His major appearance takes place in the Future Trunks Saga anime, where we find out that future Yajirobe lived, baby, let's go! He tells Goku and Vegeta that when the androids attacked, Korin kicked him off the tower. He then saves Goku and Trunks from the Zamasu duo, once again showing us his GOAT status. Yajirobe then hangs tight for the rest of the arc, when we can see him playing a supporting role before he, and just about all the other residents of the future timeline, dies to infinite Zamasu. Yajirobe also has a brief appearance in Dragon Ball Super Superhero when Piccolo goes to check out Korin. Yajirobe makes one brief appearance in GT, as he is seen being teleported off Earth post-Baby Saga. And finally, Yajirobe does have a handful of film appearances. He helps resuscitate Krillin and Goku after they fail to blow up Lord Slug's ship. He gives Gohan the senzu bean in Cooler's Revenge, and for some reason, he tags along with the rest of the Z-Fighters to Namek in The Return of Cooler. So, I'm not gonna lie, I have almost no trivia for Yajirobe. Since he's a rather niche Dragon Ball character who isn't too attached to the big later stories of Dragon Ball Z, there isn't much to say about him other than his contributions to the story. An interesting tidbit, though, from his first interaction with Goku, is that Goku reveals that Yajirobe is one of the toughest guys Goku has fought up until this point. This would include Ten Shinhan, who just beat Goku in the 22nd World Tournament, and Master Roshi, who beat Goku in the previous tournament. Also in this first interaction, Goku comments on how Yajirobe sounds like Krillin. I found out that they actually share a voice actress for the original Japanese audio of the anime. Even in the English dub, both characters have a rather gravelly voice. Hey, during editing Tough Man here, so I actually lied, and there are a couple of interesting Yajirobe facts. The first one is that Yajirobe actually does make a brief appearance in the Namek Saga. On one of the chapter covers in the midst and the climax of the Goku vs. Freeza fight, there's a cool little panel of Yajirobe sitting by a campfire and going, I wonder what Goku's up to right now. And the other one actually comes from a Dragon Ball Z filler episode. So in Dragon Ball Z episode 164, the episode is titled The Ghost from Tomorrow. It actually features a flashback of the future androids killing all of the Z-Fighters. And one of the Z-Fighters is Yajirobe. This is really interesting because we know that this is actually filler content that cannot be canon, or at least cannot be canon to Dragon Ball Super and its anime continuity, given that Yajirobe lives in that version of the story. Something I think is really interesting. However, although this is the case, this could still work with the Dragon Ball Super manga, as Yajirobe is nowhere to be seen in that future timeline. So, why is Yajirobe underrated? Enough people commented on him and wanted him to be reviewed, so why is he here? Similar to King Cold, I think there's a simple answer here. Yajirobe's just the MFing GOAT, guys. Yajirobe is a rather funny character in Dragon Ball who is basic and may seem forgettable, but in just about all of his major appearances, he comes in clutch and saves the day. Against Demon King Piccolo, twice, and against Vegeta, twice, Yajirobe comes out of nowhere to save Goku and friends. We could even credit Goku living at the end of the original series to Yajirobe, who swoops in and gives Goku a senzu bean. I think this paradoxical status of a savior whom no one remembers gives Yajirobe this niche fanbase. And I don't think there's too much to say other than that. If it wasn't for Yajirobe, Vegeta would have defeated the Z-Fighters. And if it wasn't for Yajirobe, Demon King Piccolo would have taken over the world. So next time he makes his little cameo in the background of Goku and friends, make sure to show him some respect. So that's it. That's 3 more underrated Dragon Ball characters. But before I end the video, I owe you guys an apology, as there's no shallot. So in the last video, I had you guys comment who you would want to see next, and I was going to base this video on which characters and comments got the most likes. One of the top characters was the Dragon Ball Legends original, Shallot. The reason why he's not here is because I didn't realize there was so much lore to Dragon Ball Legends. I'm a Dokkan supremacist, I don't play Legends. And because of that, I want to make it up to you guys by recording and maybe live streaming a playthrough of the story of Dragon Ball Legends. That way I am properly informed on the character and the context of his story before I just do a bunch of secondary research and try to hobble together. I don't want to half-ass it, I guess is the point. If I'm going to talk about a Dragon Ball character, I want to make sure I know their intricacies, right? And so with that, we're done. We went over 3 Dragon Ball characters of varying relevance from the original series. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys learned something, and if you want a part 3, comment below more Dragon Ball characters that you think are underrated or underlooked within the franchise. If you see a comment highlighting the character you want to see, then like the comment. Thank you all so much for the support on the Ultra Instinct video. It was really cool seeing folks happy about my return, and I'm happy to be back. I'm not sure how long this is going to last, but I like making videos, so I'm going to keep making videos. Yajirobe fans, rise up, and have a great day, everyone.